Well, welcome to the first P2 webinar of 2021. And we've got a new look today because this is the first webinar that's focused around our new brand, P2 Digital Transformation. And hopefully we're going to be talking about that today. We're going to be talking about what we P2 Consulting believe underpins digital transformation. For those who recall how these things work, we'll be talking for half an hour. There will be a chance for questions at the end of the session. And of course, everyone who's attended will get a link to this video, and you're very welcome to share that with whoever you want, or come back and ask us any questions you feel appropriate. So, digital transformation, a really interesting area, means a lot of things to a lot of people. But for those who've not come across P2 Consulting before, digital transformation is something that's very close to our heart. We've been in industry-leading transformation consultancy for about 7 years now, and more over the last few years, our focus has been on how we help our clients achieve their digital ambitions. My name's Adam Skinner. I'm Director of Consulting here, and digital ambition is something that is very close to our heart. So what does digital ambition mean? Well, for us, digital ambition is really how an organization decides to harness digital capability to improve on what it offers and what it delivers. I'll give you a few really nice examples that I use when I'm delivering my SAFE training. A couple of really interesting factors that you look at some of the biggest companies in the world. So for instance, this top one, BMW, a car manufacturer, actually spends half its R&D budget on software. This is a car manufacturer focusing on digital as a way of differentiating itself. Amazon and Whole Foods, going back a bit here now, but actually Amazon merging with Whole Foods. Amazon doesn't sell foods, but actually it's working with Whole Foods to allow them access to its platforms, to allow them to sell better and at lower prices. Tesla, in the news an awful lot, and as we know, and again, this is quite a long time ago now, I'm pretty sure the cap's even higher now. Tesla, much smaller than Ford, but were far more, almost entirely based on its ability to change quickly and its digital appeal. And it's probably the most interesting one of these is this final one, as Apple, believe it or not, is the biggest watchmaker in the world. I mean, if you went back kind of 4 years to who do we think the biggest watchmaker in the world, you wouldn't even dream of saying Apple. But Apple is, believe it or not, now the biggest watchmaker in the world. And I find that so fascinating, because actually Apple isn't that because they make particularly brilliant watches. They're that because they have got a grip on their digital front end, and they have such a great brand that they can move into watchmaking and become the biggest watchmaker in the world rapidly, effectively, within a few years. Really fascinating stuff. For mere mortals, actually, digital ambition means actually getting a better grip on how one faces into customers, understanding a bit more about what our customers need using our digital underpinnings, and really taking a grip of those digital capabilities to work on them. So some really interesting aspects of digital capability that support one's competitive advantage. And actually, I think competitive advantage is a really important word here, because we're really clear that for us, digital ambition is about how an organization harnesses digital to improve one's competitive advantage. If you look at all those examples up there, they're all great examples of organizations that have really maximized their competitive advantage by applying some modern digital techniques. As I say, digital ambition is about improving one's competitive advantage through digital capability. And digital transformation is about how does one get there. So what does that mean? Actually, some pretty words there, but what does that actually mean in practice? Well, the good news is actually most organizations already have a lot of this stuff already in place. It's really about how one integrates them. So as an organization, you will have a product. That product is either a physical product or a service. You will have an organization that supports you in building that product, delivering that product to the customer. You will have a way of accessing the customer through the cloud, through a physical store, through a web front end, through an iPhone. And of course, you will have a customer. Now, underpinning that, you will have pools of data. You will know stuff about your organization. You will know stuff about the product. You will know stuff about your process. You will know stuff about the customer. You will also almost certainly have a change function, and that change function will be continually trying to improve what you as an organization do and how you engage with the customer. So far, I've described pretty much every organization out there. So what differentiates an organization like this with a truly digitally ambitious organization? Well, we think it's three things. First of those things is analytics. And analytics is the ability to take those pools of data and align them, bring them all together so that you can see the flow of information, the flow of activity from idea out to customer. You've got that all aligned through your data lake. You also need to be able to mine that data, look for opportunities where value is being lost in the process and where opportunities exist. If you're doing analytics right, it should be driving all sorts of ideas for improvement and a really good idea of what the value of those improvements are, which takes us to the next digital capability, which is agility. And agile, or scaled agile in some cases, is the ability to take that information and quickly, efficiently, and effectively use it to change and continuously improve how one's operating in a way that's adaptive, has customer value right at the heart of it. So analytics has told me what to change. Agile has allowed me to do that change. And finally, you have automation. And automation is the ability to use modern techniques to automate one's processes, one's engagement with customers. So one is doing that in a low cost, high quality, and ultimately low pace. So three fundamental digital capabilities: analytics, agile, and automation, that underpin an organization's digital ambition. And it's as much about having those individual capabilities as about how one coordinates those capabilities so they talk to each other. The analytics and the agile, what to change, and the agile being supported by the automation to do it rapidly, effectively, high quality, and low cost. So let's dig into each of those areas in a little bit more detail. If we start by looking at analytics, what are we really trying to say when we talk about analytics? Because it's something that gets talked about a lot, and if you look at LinkedIn, you'll see all sorts of posts, all sorts of articles talking about machine learning or AI being the new big thing, and it does sound quite overwhelming. In actual fact, it's actually quite straightforward, quite simple. As I say, your organization will be sitting on pools of data, but those pools of data will almost certainly not be coordinated. They will almost certainly not be aligned. So really, you're looking to do two things. Firstly, you're looking to try and align that data. You're trying to ensure all that data talks to each other and maps to the customer journey, that kind of end-to-end flow from idea for a product out to customer at the end. So you're trying to align that data to start off. And then secondly, you're trying to use modern techniques to mine that data, to explore that data, to look for areas of concern, to look for areas of problem, and to look for opportunities. A really basic example actually is sort of customer engagement when you're buying, for instance, a mortgage through a digital platform of a bank. Actually, if the bank's doing the job properly, they will have aligned the data from customer accessing website to customer buying product, and you'll be able to see when customers are dropping out of the process, or when there is lag in the process, or where there is an uptick in the process. And that should allow one to decide, where am I going to improve that process? Where is the greatest value loss? When I talk about analytics, I really talk about kind of four types of analytics. It's worth sort of exploring each of those in a little bit of detail. For me, predictive analytics is the ability to look at data sets and use that to help one understand what is going on in the future, what is likely to happen, and more importantly, what is likely to go wrong. This is something you often apply in transformation programs. You often use predictive analytics to look at your change data and work out where there are errors, where there are potential risks that others may not have spotted. And you can use some fairly basic techniques such as a random forest analysis to allow you to do that as long as the data is aligned. Organizational analytics is really where the world of analytics came from in the first place, and that's using data mining techniques to look at information around how an organization operates, process flows and the like, to look for weaknesses and gaps. Classically, originally used in the manufacturing space, but more and more now applied to service organizations. Customer analytics is exactly what it says in the tin. It's about looking at the customer and trying to work out what the customer likes and what the customer doesn't like about the product. Now, traditionally, organizational analytics and customer analytics have been two very different worlds, but they're more and more coming together, and I can see that as for the good. For instance, in the old days, customer analytics would have been a survey, and we've all been hit by those. We've had a bad experience on our website. We get a little form asking us how did we feel, or on a scale of 0 to 10. Now, at best, that's going to give the organization a little bit of data, a bit of lag. At worst, you'll just ignore it, or the data's not being used. Far more powerful is if you're using modern analytics techniques to get real-time access into how a customer is engaging with a website or product, and that's all eminently doable. Now, the fourth thing is actually quite a new term. It's something called data ops, and those familiar with Agile, with Scaled Agile, will be familiar with the term DevOps, which is really about how you link the change activity from your development world and your operational world. Data ops is actually trying to do the same thing. It's about trying to take all these different pools of data and aligning it to the operations. It's a new term, it's quite a new concept, but it's definitely one to keep an eye on. So as I say, analytics is very much about how does one align the data, how does one mine the data to tell us what to change. Quite a nice example of where we've supported that on the right-hand side, essentially looking at a system and a process for an audit company and using analytics to understand where that process was working, where it was broken, which in turn informed the architecture for the replacement system that could then be brought in and be much more efficient and effective both for the client and for the business. Great example of analytics allowing you to look at end-to-end process and end-to-end system, work out where it's broken, suggest improvements, which allows then the transformation approach to come in and do those improvements. So the first data capability to have a really good understanding of is the world of analytics. The second digital capability is agility, is Agile. And again, not a particularly new term, but I think it really is coming into its own recently, particularly with COVID, particularly with people getting much more excited about sort of digital on the front end and the digitalization of the business. So what is Agile? Well, Agile in a nutshell is a way of doing change, but it's a way of doing change that accepts that waterfall mindsets are quite slow and fall to the fallacy that you can sit at the beginning of a 2-year transformation and say exactly what the customer is going to want at the end of that 2-year transformation. So Agile is a way of structuring that change and breaking up into small chunks to allow you to do those changes as quickly as you can, get it in front of the customer as quickly as you can, and work out what they like and what they don't like, so one can continually adapt and move towards something that was really high value for the customer. Agile is something we talk an awful lot about. If you're really interested in Agile, you'll find a number of webinars that we've done about this last year, which can be accessed on our website, particularly the introduction to SAFe, which is a Scaled Agile methodology. So there's probably 3 areas if you're new to Agile that you want to start to explore. There's the basic Agile methodology, and there's a couple of methodologies you can look at in this space. There's sort of like Kanban or Scrum, which is the world-leading specific, detailed, tactical, Agile way of delivering change. If you want to look at how to deliver Agile at scale, you might want to look at LESS, which is large-scale Scrum, or my preferred approach is something called SAFe, Scaled Agile Framework. And that's really about a way of saying, okay, great, I see how Agile is going to help me do small changes. How on earth do I scale that up? So how on earth do I take all those small changes and apply them to a global business that has architectural, regulatory, all sorts of different controls that need to be in place? And Scaled Agile, SAFe, is a way of doing that. It combines kind of the safety and security of a structured approach with the agility and the adaptiveness of small iterative delivery. Finally, the Agile organization. And there isn't really a methodology around this. There's a lot of people who talk about the phrase Agile organization. It's really a concept that says, okay, it's great to just apply Agile to change areas, but shouldn't the principles that underpin Agile apply just as well to the entire organization, to the HR, to the finance? Shouldn't we be trying to make our organizations entirely Agile in this modern world where we need to keep tweaking and changing, and the pace of change increases faster and faster? So the Agile organization, and again, SAFe leans quite heavily into how one makes one's entire organization more Agile. So analytics tells us how to change. Agile allows us to change in a way that puts customer value, the adaptiveness at its heart, allows us to change and tweak our improvements. A nice little example of some of the work we've done around Agile on the right. Again, here we looked at the Agile strategy of an insurance company, and actually we helped them understand how they could move from being primarily waterfall to being scaled Agile. So analytics and agility. The third digital capability we're looking to talk about is automation. Automation has been around for a while in a range of forms. What's particularly exciting about automation these days is that the tools and the systems that underpin automation are now available to pretty much anyone. So if you have a Microsoft Office license, you will almost certainly have access to something called Power Automate. If you haven't, you can get the free tool UiPath online, which allows you to build bots. All of these are tools that essentially allow you to automate processes. And these are quite intuitive, really clever stuff that pretty much anyone can pick up when you need to. And automation is really very important, and it's not just for big multinational organizations. Automation is really just a way of saying there's a process I go through, I am going to automate that process so that the computer can do it for me. And there's some really important advantages to that. I mean, we talk about three really important advantages. Obviously, firstly, it reduces cost. It's much quicker and it involves much less human interaction. So the cost goes down. Secondly, because it takes human out of the loop, it actually increases quality. So it irons inaccuracies and error out of the process. And obviously, it is faster. So final thing it does, it allows you to move at pace. We tend to talk about four different areas of focus when one's exploring automation, the world of automation. If one's approaching automation from a change perspective, then probably the most common form of automation one talks about is test and environment automation, or DevOps. And really that's about how do you use various tools, so Jenkins and others, to automate one's testing and to automate the stand-up environments so that you can very, very quickly and rapidly build code and test that code, get it out into the system. Again, if we're talking Agile, a really important component of Agile is actually getting code tested and released quickly. So DevOps and the automation of your testing and your environment stand-up is absolutely critical. A second area that's taking on more and more interest is what we call the Automation Center of Excellence. So as I say, automation is something that's within the reach of pretty much anyone these days. And as such, it's really important that an organization skills up its people in automation and some of the tools it can use so that they can automate simple processes. And here we're not talking about kind of trying to automate a vast multinational organization's end-to-end customer approach. We're talking about automating simple stuff like how I might want to stand up a purchase order and link it to a financial tracking tool I might have. How I might want to automate an email structure so that every Friday an email goes out to notify people that I need a report produced. All these simple stuff, small optimizations that over time really do improve one's efficiency and quality. One of the things we're really keen on is this concept of the center of excellence. So the idea that actually there should be a central point of the organization that promotes automation, supports the wider organization upskilling in that, and identifies areas to improve. In our world, it often sits in or linked to a program management office because there's such a natural link between that activity and the change activity. The third area is what people think when they think of classic automation. So industrial or workflow RPA, and that's when you bring in a big system, you look at how one's end-to-end activity occurs in an organization and looks at structure, process automation around that. And actually slightly mapping what you see in the analytics world, where in the past there was a split between kind of operational analytics and customer analytics. You have a similar thing in the automation world. And we call it customer service automation. And you will have experienced this if you've gone onto any online website, and particularly with the banks. A little box will pop up and they'll ask you if you need some support. Now, all of that is obviously underpinned by bots. Here you see a lovely link between the world of analytics and the world of automation. So essentially, the bot has automated the process of engaging with you, the questions, and the analytics has helped the organization understand what people are likely to ask, what questions are likely to come out, so the bots can automate that. It also allows you to create a link between what the bots do and what the bots can't do. So analytics will help you understand what is the low-hanging fruit in those conversations and at what point the bot needs to push you from a bot to a true human in the customer services space. On the right, an example of where we've got quite excited about automation. This is where we helped a world-class retailer create an automation center of excellence linked to their portfolio function, which then helped to upskill their organization and helped that organization do continual small optimizations to processes across the organization, to drive that value and to drive that quality. Really important stuff, definitely worth having a thought about. So 3 really important digital capabilities that underpin pretty much all of the organizations we talked about at the beginning of the presentations: digital ambition, analytics, agility, and automation. Well, that's all really good, I hear you say, but actually, how do I know where I am? How do I know my organization's digital ambition, digital agility? Well, at P2, we use a particular tool called the Digital Agility Maturity Framework, which allows us to walk into an organization, have a look at how they do end-to-end activity, how they do their end-to-end flow of value, and try and identify the low-hanging fruit, both in terms of kind of point improvements, i.e. you need test automation, or you could be applying analytics to your customer journey, and this is probably more important, the end-to-end value flow. So as I hope you're getting from what I'm saying, it's important to be good in these individual silos, but actually it's far more important to link it all together. Analytics by itself is no good. It'll just tell you what needs to change. Unless you can actually change, then you're not going to get any value out of it. Unless you can do it in an effective fashion using automation, you won't be able to do it fast enough and low cost enough to keep up with your competitors. So we apply this tool to help us understand both where improvements can be made and how an organization can better align their end-to-end flow. And it really looks at 4 quadrants of that end-to-end flow, where the ideas come from, and how one analyzes the data. We call that fill the hopper. Empty the hopper, how do I realize that and create the change? Release the value, how do I make sure that it's doing that in a fashion that has the business as the customer at the heart, continue allowing the customer to dictate what value means and how often it wants releases and the like. And finally, how does one control the journey? Is one applying one's metrics and analytics to continually improve, to look for errors and problems going forward? Digital Agility Maturity Framework, really important tool to allow one to understand how able one is to achieve one's digital ambitions. So I'm going to pause now for any questions. We've probably got a couple of minutes to tackle those if anybody would like to write any in. So I've had one in here. Oh, okay, yeah. So a question here asking about how one links the world of analytics to the world of agility, which is a really good question. In some ways, it's the $1 million question. I mean, there are a range of ways, but my preferred way is if one's applied, applying an agile approach, you often have something called a product roadmap, which is really a kind of tool to tell the story about how a product is going to move and grow and improve over a kind of 6 months, 12 months, 2-year window. That tool allows you both to see what change needs to happen and actually understand what value means to the organization and to the customer. If one's doing on analytics properly, the data that you're pooling should be telling you where improvements and changes need to be made. That information then can flow up into the product roadmap. So you'll be seeing all sorts of changes and suggestions being driven out by the analytics, where customers are getting bored in the process, where they're dropping out of the process, where there's inefficiency in the operations. Those will all feed straight into the product roadmap with values attached to them. So the analytics will not only tell you where the problem is, it should tell you the scale of the problem, which you should then be able to use to understand kind of how high priority or otherwise that particular changes. That then feeds into the product roadmap, which tells you what you're going to be doing with that product over time, which then drops down into your Agile backlog, which is basically your list of stuff, list of change to do, and allows you to prioritize that. So from your analytics space, into your product roadmap, into your backlog, to allow one to then deliver on that backlog. So I'm very, so for me, that's the most sensible way of trying to link those two together. Then the link into automation, almost always you will find that product roadmap will be suggesting automation improvements to make. So those user stories will drive automation improvements, and that will be how you will continually improve the automation of your organization. Well, we're a little bit tight for time now, so I'll pause the questions there, but I will come out to a number of people who asked questions, and I'll drop personal emails out there. You are also, of course, very welcome to link up with me or drop me an email after this, and I can provide you with a personal answer. So I hope you found that a useful exploration of digital transformation, how one achieves one's digital transformation, and what digital ambition means in the modern world. We're going to be running a number of webinars that will look at some of those different aspects in a bit more detail. So the next webinar is going to look at OKRs, which is a way of kind of designing the strategic journey an organization wants to go on, and putting the customer at the heart of your product roadmap. So really an expansion of what I was just talking about there about how one takes analytics data and turns that into stuff that needs to change. We'll then look in specifically at automation and look at the everyday tools that improves and allows one to deliver on automation. We'll look on the 24th of June at digital agility, so a bit more of an expansion on that digital agility framework, which I touched on a few minutes ago. And finally, we'll talk about the DevOps revolution, a phrase that you've no doubt heard a lot. We'll explore what that actually means, and is it right for you and your business. Well, that's everything from me. I hope you've enjoyed this first webinar of 2021. As I say, please do feel free to link into me. Please do feel free to get in touch if you've got any questions or want to explore a bit more on what P2 digital transformation can do for you or your business in the realms of analytics, agile, or automation. Thanks very much. Have a great weekend.